Hello, this is Generation Ministries Worldwide. I'm with Reverend Pastor Elton Brewington, and today we have Larry and Carol McGee. And Larry and Carol McGee were married in 1978 in Urbana, Illinois, where Larry was a businessman and Carol taught middle school mathematics through university level mathematics. They are known for their presentations on a variety of topics at conferences and churches both in the United States and abroad. Now living in Daytona Beach, Florida, Larry and Carol enjoy mentoring young people, traveling the world, studying the Bible, encouraging others, boogie boarding, which I'm learning a lot about from them, playing pickleball and collaborating with their writing projects. And Larry has very generously given us his time to do this 5 session certification course. Many of you are Christian podcasters and Christian media, and storytelling is a big part of your channel. And so if you would listen in to all 5 sessions, they are available on the McGeebooks.com website as well as on our YouTube channel. And if you can write us some feedback, then we can send you details on how you could be certified for this 5-week training. So over to you, Larry McGee and Carol McGee. Welcome. And this is session 3, 2 medical miracles.
Thank you very much for allowing us to be on again. It's interesting that if you look back on your life and you can tell those times when God has intervened in your life. I am not anywhere near a super Christian. I probably don't read the Bible as much as I should, but I have always said yes to God whenever He's asked me to do something. And I know that God has had His hand on my life. And I want to share a couple medical examples of that, of how God intervened without really me even knowing at the time. Well, in 1965, I returned from the U.S. Navy, was served in the South Pacific as part of a project in Vietnam. When I returned from the Navy, I went into the glass business with an older brother. To say it mildly, it turned out to be a rather toxic relationship. Over a period of a couple of years, I started developing constant headaches. And they were not totally debilitating, but they did really cause a change in the quality of my life. I learned an important lesson in being in business with a brother. And a small business will get to be successful at some point because of the way the owner is. Most of the cases, the business will not grow any larger because of the way the owner is. And that is kind of exactly what happened. So over a period of time, I developed some terrible back pains. I didn't realize it at the time, but one of the signs of a bleeding ulcer is back pains. There's a nerve that runs from the stomach to the middle of the back. And so the only sign I had was a back that ached, and I mean, really was painful. And I, at one point, became so weak that I just was really having a hard time coping. And so I went in and I had an x-ray, and they did an x-ray where I was a standing x-ray, and I almost passed out. And Carol was there and was obviously quite concerned. I was then hospitalized, and I was in there 3 different times. I was in and out 3 times. I wound up having a number, I think it was 10, if I'm not mistaken, blood transfusions at the time. I was in pretty desperate shape. When I got back out of the hospital, Carol and I were talking about it. And Carol, what did you say to me at that time?
I just said what he was talking about, how his business with his brother-in-law had gotten us to this point. And I said, I don't care if we have to live in a shack. I don't care where we have to live, what we have to do. You have got to get out of this. This is a critical moment in our lives, making decisions about where we want our lives to be, and certainly for his health.
And we walked away from a lot of money, and but it was the best decision that we ever made. I wound up still having headaches for about 6 months, and then they went away. Well, fast forward to the year 2000. We were in a Bible study at that time, wonderful people. I think I've mentioned it in a couple of other uh, podcasts that we've had. Uh, I was at that time, I went in for a regular blood test, and they came back and they said, "You have tested positive for hepatitis C." And I had no idea how I could have got hepatitis C. I didn't have any of the normal things. I had never done drugs. I had never done all the other things that usually cause hepatitis C. And at the time, we didn't really put it all together. Um, it turned out that what had happened is I got the hepatitis C from the blood transfusions I had. And back at that time in the late 90s, there was no test for on the blood for hepatitis C before they gave blood transfusions. So all the blood transfusions I got, some of them, or one of them at least, gave me hepatitis C. Um, there was not much hope at that time for hepatitis C patients. And Carol, you can tell a little bit better about what the treatments were at that time for a patient with hepatitis C.
Well, first of all, they had to do a liver biopsy, which is a very painful procedure. And when they determined that it was hepatitis C and they saw the condition of Larry's liver, he actually had what they considered a mild case, or it wouldn't caught early, but it was a mild case. And I think that's because he had never had any alcohol to drink in his entire life. There was nothing that he had done to destroy his liver in any other way. And so this was what they found. There were two drugs at the time that were used in combination for hepatitis C patients. One was interferon, and I cannot remember the name of the other. But when we researched ourselves and when we spoke to the medical professionals, they said that actually those treatments could turn out to be much worse than the actual disease. The treatments were the type that completely would alter a person's personality and behavior. They said we actually joined a group online where some people had the treatment. They were in the midst of divorces, all kinds of issues that were just nightmarish. Now, we looked at that and we thought, again, which is worse, the treatment or the disease? And so we decided, under the care of some physicians, that Larry would not participate in those treatments. But we didn't know the ramifications of that decision. We didn't know if his hepatitis C would get worse, what effect it would have on the rest of his organs, the whole thing. So it was a very difficult time of decision making and prayer and research, and we made that decision to not have those drugs.
So we went to our regular Bible study, and we had asked for prayer that particular night for guidance in what to do. And there were people that led the Bible study with husband and wife. They were both doctors. And so we asked for prayer. They prayed for me. About a week later, out of the blue, we got a call from an organization asking us if we'd be interested in a drug study for people with hepatitis C.
Just out of the blue.
Yeah. So Carol was working from home at that time, and she we knew that going into this, it was going to be a very, very difficult time. And that if we went through this drug study, that it was so tough on the body that she would probably have to do everything else in the house.
So we actually, I had a job at that time that was on average about 50 hours a week. Larry was semi-retired. He was working from home as well. His hours were not as difficult. So Larry had literally, we'd almost, he made an agreement with me. He said, "You do your 50 hours of work a week, and I'll do everything else." So I was spoiled rotten. Larry was doing the shopping and the cooking and the laundry and cleaning the house, paying the bills, everything that it takes to manage a household. And I was doing my work plus his part-time job. So so the idea of participating in this study and having these infusions, putting him in complete fatigue would mean that I had to take over all of that responsibility. And he was not so sure that I was up to it, I
Well,
think.
actually, I asked you, Carol, are you sure we can do this?
Yeah. And I said, absolutely. We have to do it. When things like this come up, you just learn to step up. You do what you have to do. And that was one of these cases.
And we found out the cost of that treatment at that time was $90,000. And we we got the call. We went ahead and answered the call, and they got me into this drug trial at no cost.
The one thing that was interesting during that period of time, you would think, well, after a little while, Larry would be able to probably take on some of the tasks of the house and so on. We were 4 months into the 6 months of this treatment, and Larry was feeling guilty, I guess, that I was having to do everything. And he said, let me just at least empty the dishwasher for you. And so he got up from his chair. He got halfway through emptying the dishwasher and had to sit back down. So the degree of fatigue was palpable. I mean, it was just, you could not believe how severe the fatigue was.
Unfortunately, I don't remember a lot of that. But the outcome was I was completely cured of hepatitis C, and it cost us nothing other than pain and some time.
And so
Um,
the fact that this study came up when it did, we believe we know the source of how they knew to call Larry, but that person never let on that they had arranged this for us. And so it was just truly a God thing.
the second miracle happened about 2 years ago, or started 2 years ago, and I was starting to notice that I was having problems remembering things, and Carol was concerned, and she was feeling the same way. We happened to be in a business building, and we saw a place there was called Progressive Medical Research. They did drug trials, and they said something about having an Alzheimer's study. And we kind of looked at each other and said, well, why don't we at least check it out? So we went to the desk. We told them that we were interested in that. And they said, well, let me take your name and we'll get back to you. So we did. And we heard nothing. And it was a year later, went by, we got a phone call. And they said, we found your name on a Post-it note inside of a file that said you were interested in an Alzheimer's study. I want to know, are you still interested? We said, yes, absolutely we are. So we went in and to the medical research place, and they gave me a verbal test to see how I could remember things. And they said, well, you looks like you've got a problem here. And so we want to do a PET scan on your brain to see what kind of plaque buildup there is. For those of you who don't know, Alzheimer's is caused because of plaque buildup on the brain. So I went in and did this PET scan, and it's like an X-ray, only it's only different. And we went back in and they said, okay, we have the results of your PET scan. So on our scale, your plaque on your brain is 130. Well, at the time, that meant nothing to us. We didn't have any idea what the scale was or even what it meant. He said, you qualify for our test. Would you like to go ahead?
We didn't know what the scale meant, but they said it was a relatively high number on whatever the scale was.
So we said, yes, we definitely wanted to do that. So this was a drug test by Eli Lilly Company. And what happened is the drug test itself was not a blind study. Well, it was in one sense and one another. Everybody that was going through this would get the medication. What we didn't know was whether you were getting it every 2 weeks or once a month. They had done the study and had been successful in removing plaque from the brain, but they were trying to figure out the right kind of dosages. So I went in every other week for 6 months and got an infusion. I didn't know whether I was getting it every 2 weeks or whether I was getting it once a month. So after 6 months, we went in and said, okay, Larry, we want to have you do another PET scan and see if the plaque is removed. The other thing, all along, they had been doing X-rays and things of the brain and
MRIs.
MRIs
Yeah.
to see if I had any brain bleed, and I had none of that and no side effects. So he said, Larry said, we don't want to get your hopes up. Now you had 130 scale on the scale. So you have to get below 10 to stop receiving the medication. The best we've ever seen is someone that had 50 level plaque and went to 9. So, and almost positively, you're going to have to keep getting the drug for another 6 months. So I went in and got the PET scan, came back. Carol and I went in, sat down, and the guy was kind of shaking his head. And he said, Larry, he said, you went from 130 to 9. And we were thinking, wow, it just,
It was amazing.
And they couldn't believe it. And we were just kind of beside ourselves in knowing it. And I said to him, well, what are the chances of the plaque coming back? And he laughed. He says, Larry, you're 82 years old. You're not going to live long enough to have the plaque come back. So we were so pleased about that. I was happy that, of course, I was cured of the plaque in my brain that causes Alzheimer's. I was more pleased that Carol wasn't going to have to take care of an Alzheimer patient for the rest of her life, probably in mine. My trial is now finished, but there are other drug trials that are going on. One point I wanted to make, I mentioned to you that we didn't hear from them for a whole year after we went in initially. We found out not too long ago that the drug trial that I was on was not available a year earlier, and it is not available now. So if I had not, if the timing had not been as such, I would not have been in that drug trial. I think God's timing is always perfect, and it was God's timing that we were able to go in when we did so that we could get into that study.
The other thing that I think is so powerful is that Larry is open enough to share these stories. And really, everywhere we go, we were on a cruise relatively soon after he got the good results of going down to a level of 9. And every night we had dinner with different individuals on the cruise, and he would tell a story every night to different individuals, and people were so uplifted by the fact that there's hope. There is actual hope for Alzheimer's patients, and especially if there's early detection. And so he has really spread the word of the fact that that it's not like it used to be. It's not like you have to resign yourself to the fact that, okay, I have Alzheimer's, I have a certain type of dementia, and I'm just going to go downhill from now. And so we're just so excited. And Larry's become kind of the poster boy for the particular drug trial company here in town, and he speaks at various luncheons that they have to informational luncheons that they have around town, and um, it's just been a way that God has used him to give hope to other people. It was
The
just
other thing I want to mention now, I don't know that all drug studies are like the one that I'm on, and all organizations are like that. But it was amazing because the people in this particular building where we went, this particular study, they're doing that study, they were so nice. It was not like going into a doctor's office where you sat in these rough plastic chairs until you were ready. It was like going in and sitting into their living room. And the people that were there were pulling for me. They were cheerful. They were happy for my results. I've had some people say, "Well, I'm not going to go through drug studies, and be a lab rat for anybody." And I just want to assure you that's not the way it is. And there is so much hope out there now. And important thing to remember: doctors are great, but doctors are about 8 to 10 years behind what's going on, knowing what's going on in some of these drug studies. What I'm on now it was just so far advanced, and they are doing so many different things. What we found out is that it was at 25% of people over 50 years of age right now are suffering from fatty liver. And you can go in and get tested for fatty liver at least in the place that we are, at no charge, about 15 minutes, and they can tell you if you have fatty liver. And they have all kinds of other studies that are going on to bring health to people.
yeah. I know, Elton and Elizabeth, that this is not a medical program, but I have a feeling that those who are watching or will be watching are going to want to know the name of the medication that is currently out there for Alzheimer's that was part of Larry's study. So it is by Eli Lilly, and it's being marketed under the name Kisunla, Kisunla. Kisunla by Eli Lilly. So people can question their doctors and ask about that particular medication if they're certainly in the early stages of memory loss.
And if anybody would like to talk more about that with us, our email address is,
Well,
what is
we'll just use our McGehe@gmail.com.
And we'd be happy to give you any more information or talk you through it. There's just so much hope, and we want to spread that.
Okay, very good. Thank you, thank you, thank you so much. Really appreciate your insight and suggestions. And it's so ironic that when people do face medical circumstances and trauma, in many cases they're afraid and they just don't know what their expectations should be. And they probably take moments and time and hours to pray and talk to the master about what they should do. But of course, with no perspective, just being faithful. Lord, just be faithful, and you have your way about that. So, and those considerations, and the Lord will bless. He will bless. All He asks that we be faithful and give it over to Him. They say that if you're going to pray, don't worry. But if you're going to worry, don't pray.
It's so true.
Yeah.
And I actually have something. If you're going through a medical emergency, or you have questions, and you have to trust in God, He will bring you through it. And I think Larry's story has touched me tremendously, because there was a solution. And sometimes when we are in a situation, we have to trust in God to provide us with the resources that we need, the solutions that we need. And He provided you with everything that you needed at that time, that you
Amen.
were able to not only come out for yourself, but now be a blessing to the whole community, because every time you speak about it, you're going to impact someone who's going through with what you are. So I want to just read a little scripture which is in my hand. God has not given us a spirit of fear, but of power and of love and of a sound mind. And this is from 2 Timothy verse 1 to 7. A couple of years ago, this scripture changed my life, because I was always fearful and always worried about everything. And you really have to be convinced and and believe that God's going to get you through it, and you're going to come out with flying colors, and God will find resources and help and put you in places where you will meet people. Like I met Carol and Larry at a time when Elton was going through surgery, and they had so much experience, and they were able to mentor me and help me through it. So God puts you in places, introduces you to people, gives you everything you need and resources to take care of everything. So all you have to do is trust in the Lord.